And Beaziel made the ark of shittim wood. 2 cubits and a half was the length of it, and a cubit and a half the breadth of it, and a cubit and a half the height of it. And he overlaid it with pure gold within and without, and made a crown of gold round about it. And he cast it 4 rings of gold to be set by the 4 corners of it, even 2 rings upon one side of it, and 2 rings upon the other side of it. And he made staves of shittim wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he put the staves into the rings by the sides of the ark to bear the ark. And he made the mercy seat of pure gold. 2 cubits and a half was the length thereof, and 1 cubit and a half the breadth thereof. He made 2 cherubims of gold, beaten out of one piece, made he them on the 2 ends of the mercy seat, 1 cherub on the end of his side, and another cherub on the other end of that side. Out of the mercy seat made he the cherubims on the 2 ends thereof. And the cherubim spread out their wings on high, and covered with their wings over the mercy seat with their faces one to another, even to the mercy seatward were the faces of the cherubims. And he made the table of shittim wood. 2 cubits was the length thereof, and a cubit the breadth thereof, and a cubit and a half the height thereof. And he overlaid it with pure gold, and made thereunto a crown of gold round about. And he made hitherunto a border of an handbreadth round about, and made a crown of gold for the border thereof round about. And he cast it 4 rings of gold, and he put the rings upon the 4 corners that were in the 4 feet thereof. Over against the border were the rings, the places for staves to bear the table. And he made the staves of shittim wood, and overlaid them with gold to bear the table. And he made the vessel which were upon the table, his dishes, and his spoons, and his bowls, and his covers to cover withal, of pure gold. And he made the candlestick of pure gold. Of beaten work made he the candlestick. His shaft, and his branch, and his bowls, and his knops, and his flowers were of the same. And 6 branches going out of the side thereof, 3 branches of the candlestick out of the one side thereof, and 3 branches of the candlestick out of the other side thereof. 3 bowls made after the fashion of almonds in one branch, a knop and a flower, and 3 bowls made like almonds in another branch, a knop and a flower. So throughout the 6 branches going out of the candlestick. And in the candlestick were 4 bowls made like almonds, his knops and his flowers, and the knop under 2 branches of the same, and the knop under the 2 branches of the same, and a knop under the 2 branches of the same, according to the 6 branches going out of it. Their knops and their branches were of the same. All of it was one beaten work of pure gold. And he made his 7 lamps, and his snuffers, and his snuff dishes of pure gold. Of a talent of pure gold made he it, and all the vessels thereof. And he made the incense altar of shittim wood. The length of it was a cubit, and the breadth of it was a cubit. It was 4 square, and 2 cubits was the height of it. The horns thereof were the same. And he overlaid it with pure gold, both on top and on the sides there round about. And the horns of it he also made unto it a crown of gold round about. He made 2 rings of gold for under it, the crown thereof by the 2 corners of it upon the 2 sides thereof, to be places for the staves to bear it withal. And he made the staves of shittim wood, and overlaid them with gold. And he made the holy anointing oil, and the pure incense of sweet spices, according to the work of the apothecary. And he made the altar of burnt offering of shittim wood. 5 cubits was the length thereof, and 5 cubits the breadth thereof. It was 4 square, and the 3 cubits the height thereof. And he made the horns thereof, the 4 corners of it, and the horns thereof were of the same. And he overlaid it with brass. And he made all the vessels of the altar, the pots, and the shovels, and the basins, and the flesh hooks, and the fire pans. All the vessels thereof he made of brass. And he made for the altar a brazen great work of network under the compass thereof, beneath unto the midst of it. And he cast 4 rings in the 4 corners of the grate of brass, to be places for the staves. He made the staves of shittim wood, and overlaid them with brass. And he put the staves into the rings on the sides of the altar to bear it withal. He made the altar hollow with boards. And he made the layer of brass, and the foot of it brass, of the looking glass, of the woman assembling, which assembled at the door of the tabernacle of the congregation. And he made the court on the south side southward, the hangings. The court were of fine twined linen, 100 cubits. Their pillars were 20, and their brass and sockets 20. The hooks and the pillars and their fillets were of silver. And for the north side, hanging 100 cubits, their pillars were 20, and their sockets of brass 20. Their hooks of the pillars and their fillets of silver. And for the west side were hanging of 50 cubits, their pillars 10, and their sockets 10, the hooks and the pillars of their fillets of silver. And for the east side eastward 50 cubits, and the hanging of the one side of the gate were 15 cubits, the pillars 3, and their sockets 3. For the other side of the court gate, on this hand and that hand, were the hangings of 15 cubits, 3 pillars, and their sockets 3. All the hangings of the court round about were fine twined linen, and the sockets for the pillars were of brass, and the hooks of the pillars and the fillets of silver, and the overlaying of their chapters of silver, and all the pillars of the court were filled with silver, were filleted with silver. And the hanging of the gate of the court was needlework of blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen, and 20 cubits was the length, and the height in the breadth was 5 cubits, answerable to the hangings of the court. And their pillars were 4, and their sockets of brass 4, and their hooks of silver, and the overlaying of their chapters, and their fillets of silver. And all the pins of the tabernacle and the court round about were of brass. And this is the sum of the tabernacle, even the tabernacle of testimony, as it was counted according to the commandment of Moses for the service of the Levites, by the hand of Ithamar, the son of Aaron, the priest, and Belazeel, the son of Ur, the son of Hur, the tribe of Judah, made all that the Lord commanded Moses. And with him was Abielib, son of Ashimach, of the tribe of Dan, an engraver and a cunning workman, and an embroiderer in blue and in purple and in scarlet and fine linen. All the gold that was occupied for the work in all the work of the holy place, even the gold of the offering, was 20 talents, and 730 shekels after the shekel of the sanctuary. And the silver of them that was numbered in the congregation was 100 talents, and 1,760 shekels after the shekel of the sanctuary. And Becca for every man, that is half a shekel, after the shekel of the sanctuary, for every one that went to be numbered from 20 years. Old and upward, for 600,000 and 3,550 men, and all, and of the 100 talents of silver were cast the sockets of the sanctuary, and the sockets of the veil, and the sockets, and the 100 sockets of the 100 talents, a talent for a socket. And of the 1,000 filleted them, the brass of the offering was 70 talents, and 2,400 shekels. And therewith he made the sockets to the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and the brazen altar, and the brazen grate for it, and all the vessels of the altar, and the sockets of the court round about, and the sockets of the court gate, and all the pins of the tabernacle, and all the pins of the court round about. And of the blue and purple and scarlet they made cloths of service, to do service in the holy place, and they made holy garments for Aaron, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he made the ephod of gold, blue and purple and scarlet, and fine twined linen. And they did beat the gold into thin plates, and cut it into wires, to work it in the blue, and in the purple, and in the scarlet, and in the fine twine, and in the fine linen with cunning work. They made shoulder pieces for it, to couple it together. By the 2 edges it was coupled together. And the curious girdle of his ephod that was upon it was of the same, according to the work thereof, of gold, blue, purple, and scarlet, and fine twined linen, as the Lord commanded Moses. And they wrought onyx stones, enclosed in ouches of gold, graven as signets are graven with the names of the children of Israel. And he put them on the shoulders of the ephod, that they should be stones for memorial to the children of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he made the breastplate of cunning work, like the work of the ephod of gold, blue and purple and scarlet and fine twined linen. It was foursquare, and they made the breastplate double. A span was the length thereof, and a span their breadth thereof, being doubled. And they set in it 4 rows of stones. The first row was a sardius, a topaz, and a carbuncle. This was the first row. And the second row an emerald, a sapphire, and a diamond. And the third row a ligure, an agate, and an amethyst. And the fourth row a beryl, a onyx, and a jasper. And they were enclosed in ouches of gold, and in their enclosings. And the stones were according to the names of the children of Israel. 12 according to the names, like the engravings of a signet, every one with his name according to the 12 tribes. And they made upon the breastplate chains at the end of the wreathen work of pure gold. And they made 2 ouches of gold and 2 gold rings, and put the 2 rings in the 2 ends of the breastplate. And they put the 2 wreathen chains of gold and the 2 rings on the ends of the breastplate, and the 2 ends of the 2 wreathen chains they fashioned in the 2 ouches, and put them forth on the shoulder pieces of the ephod before it. And they made 2 rings of gold, and put them on the 2 ends of the breastplate upon the border of it, which was on the side of the ephod inward. And they made 2 other golden rings, and put them on the 2 sides of the ephod underneath toward the forward part, over against the other coupling thereof above the curious girdle of the ephod. And they did bind the breastplate by his rings unto the rings of the ephod with a lace of blue, that it might be above the curious girdle of the ephod, and the breastplate might not be loosed from the ephod, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he made the robe of the ephod of woven work, all of blue, and there was a hole in the midst of the robe, as a hole of a harbinger with a band round about the hole, that it should not rend. And they made upon the hems of the robe pomegranates of blue and purple and scarlet and twined linen. And they made bells of pure gold, and put the bells between the pomegranates upon the hem of the robe. A bell and upon the hem of the robe, to minister in as the Lord commanded Moses. And they made coats of fine linen of woven work for Aaron and his sons, and a mitre of fine linen, and goodly bonnets of fine linen, and linen breeches of fine twined linen, a girdle of fine twined linen, and blue and purple and scarlet of needlework, as the Lord commanded Moses. And they made the plate of the holy crown of pure gold, and wrote upon it the writing, like the engravings of the signet, holiness to the Lord. And they tied unto it lace of blue, and fastened it on the high place upon the mitre, as the Lord commanded Moses. Thus was all the work of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation finished. And the children of Israel did according to all that the Lord commanded Moses. So did they. And they brought the tabernacle unto Moses, the tent, and all the furniture, his tacks, his boards, his bars, his pillars, and his sockets, and the covering of ram skins dyed red, and the coverings of badger skins, and the veil of the covering, and the ark of the testimony, and the staves thereof, and the mercy seat, and the table, and all the vessels thereof, and the showbread, the pure candlestick with the lamps thereof, even with the lamps to be set in order, and all the vessels thereof, and the oil for light, and the gold in the altar, and the anointing oil, and the sweet incense for the hanging for the tabernacle door, the brazen altar and his grate of brass, and his staves, and his vessels, his laver and his foot, hangings for the hangings of the court, his pillars and his sockets, and the hanging for the court gate, his cords and his pins, and all the vessels of service of the tabernacle for the tent of the congregation, the cloths of service to do service in the holy place, and the holy garments for Aaron the priest, and his sons' garments to minister in the priest office, according to all that the Lord commanded Moses. So the children of Israel made all the work. And Moses did look upon all the work, and behold, they had done it as the Lord commanded. Even so they had done it, and Moses blessed them. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, On the first day of the first month thou shalt set up the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation, and thou shalt put therein the ark of the testimony, and cover the ark with the veil. And thou shalt bring in the table, and set it in order, the things that are to be set in order upon it. And thou shalt bring in the candlestick, and light the lamps thereof. And thou shalt set the altar of gold for incense before the ark of the testimony, and put the hanging of the door to the tabernacle. That thou shalt set the altar of the burnt offering before the door, of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation, and thou shalt set the laver between the tent of the congregation and the altar, and thou shalt put water therein. And thou shalt set up the court round about, hanging up the hanging of the court gate. And thou shalt take the anointing oil, and anoint the tabernacle and all that is therein. And thou shalt hallow it, and all the vessels thereof, and it shall be holy. And thou shalt anoint the altar of the burnt offering, and all his vessels, and sanctify the altar, and it shall be an altar most holy. And thou shalt anoint the laver and his foot, and sanctify it. And thou shalt bring Aaron and his sons unto the door of the tabernacle of the congregation, and wash them with water. And thou shalt put upon Aaron the holy garments, and anoint him, and sanctify him, that he may minister unto me in the priest office. And thou shalt bring his sons, and clothe them with coats. And thou shalt anoint them as thou didst anoint their father, that they may minister unto me in the priest office. And their anointing shall surely be everlasting priesthood throughout their generations. Thus did Moses according to all that the Lord commanded him, so did he. And it came to pass in the first month of the second year, on the first day of the month, that the tabernacle was reared up. And Moses reared up the tabernacle, and fastened abroad the tent over the tabernacle, and put the covering of the tent above upon it, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he took and put the testimony in the ark, and set the staves on the ark, and put the mercy seat upon the ark. And he brought the ark into the tabernacle, and set the veil of the covering, and covered the ark of the testimony, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he put the table in the tent of the congregation upon the side of the tabernacle northward, without the veil. And he set the bread in order upon it before the Lord, as the Lord had commanded Moses. And he put the candlestick in the tent of the congregation over against the table on the side of the tabernacle southward. And he lighted the lamps before the Lord, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he put the golden altar in the tent of the congregation before the veil, and he burnt sweet incense there, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he set up the hanging at the door of the tabernacle, and he put the altar of burnt offering by the door of the tabernacle of the tent of the congregation, and offered upon it the burnt offering and the meat offering, as the Lord commanded Moses. And he set the laver between the tent of the congregation and the altar, and put the water therefore to wash withal. And Moses and Aaron and his sons washed their hands and their feet. Thereat. When they went into the tent of the congregation, and when they came near the altar, they washed as the Lord commanded Moses. And he reared up the court round about the tabernacle and the altar, and set up the hanging of the court gate. So Moses finished the work. And then a cloud covered the tent of the congregation, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And Moses was not able to enter into the tent of the congregation, because the cloud abode thereon, and the glory of the Lord filled the tabernacle. And when the cloud was taken up from over the tabernacle, the children of Israel went onward in all their journeys. But if the cloud were not taken up, then they journeyed not till the day that it was taken up. For the cloud of the Lord was upon the tabernacle by day, and fire was on it by night, in the sight of all the house of Israel throughout all their journeys.